It's so interesting to think how fast things change. In 2020, nobody wanted to touch oil stocks. Oil went negative. And today, oil is hot and oil stocks are one of the best performing stocks this year. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the oil dynamics and whether I think the current performance is sustainable. If you're new to this channel, my name is Mariusz Konieczny. I run Microcap Explosions, a website dedicated for microcap stocks, which are underfollowed and ignored by the investment industry. I also wrote 10 books on investing, one of which is available for a free download at microcapexplosions.com. So make sure you get yourself a copy. MarketWatch published the following article on February 12, 2022. Oil is the hottest sector, and Wall Street analysts see upside up to 48% for favorite stocks. So what's going on? Everybody's talking about oil now and how energy is exciting, how oil stocks are going up, how the price of oil is inching closer to $100 per barrel, and how this is going to continue. It's always good to look back and think about the supply and demand. Obviously, on the demand side, when you go back to the pandemic, 2020, the demand got hammered. And now we're kind of forgetting about this freaking pandemic situation. It's tiring and people want to go back to living normal life, and we are going back to living normal life, however you want to define normal. But demand is increasing. Demand for oil is increasing. Demand for oil is back to the pre-pandemic levels, and economies are reopening. People are driving more. Population is growing, and people in countries like India are buying more cars. They want to become more like the developed nations. It might be surprising to some people who are so much in love with electric cars that it is actually predicted that the sales of conventional cars is not going to peak until 2038. So even though the sales of electric cars are going up fast, the sales of conventional vehicles are expected to still increase, because if you think about countries like India, for example, with a huge growth in the population, those people, they don't really care about the environment like people in the developed nations do, saving the environment and reducing pollution. People in developing nations, they just want a car. They just want a car, and electric cars are more expensive, and they just want to get behind the wheels and drive. So those kinds of people don't really care about being green or saving the environment or not polluting. They just want to drive. So it doesn't surprise me that they're going to be buying conventional cars, and the sales of conventional cars is going to keep increasing for many years into the future. On the supply side is, as the demand is obviously recovering very fast, and it's expected to continue increasing over the years, the supply is not really keeping up. OPEC is having problems increasing production because of the lack of investments into the new production, because of the lack of maintenance of the current oil producing infrastructure. They're having a hard time increasing production. Also, the governments around the world want to be seen as clean or thinking clean, thinking green. They are disincentivizing and making it harder for oil producing companies to invest more in the oil production facilities. So they are constraining the supply while the demand is still exploding. Right now, the demand for oil is being met by mostly two sources. One is, of course, the oil production, and then the other is the oil coming from the storage, which was filled up during the pandemic. If you remember, during pandemic, when the demand for oil was cut abruptly, the production wasn't being able to be turned off very quickly. So as the production was coming off, it had to go somewhere, and it went on land storage and it went on floating storage. That's why many of us saw rates for what the oil tankers were charging to transport oil because they were used as floating storage. And as demand returned and the production wasn't really turned back to the same level that it was before, now some of the demand is being met by oil coming from the storage. So you can call it savings. And those savings are depleting at a very fast rate right now. So all of these factors combined together, the inability to increase oil production, the governments making it difficult for oil producing companies to invest in oil production, the situation with Russia and Ukraine, the storage getting depleted, all of these things, and I'm sure many other factors, are pointing to the higher price of oil. And many investors are seeing this happening, many analysts are seeing this happening, and they are very, very optimistic on the future of the price of oil and on the future of oil stocks. If you just type into Google oil stocks to buy, oil price, anything with oil, you will see tremendous amount of positive articles pointing in the same direction. So now the question is this trend sustainable? I think it is sustainable, and I think that this trend is correct. I think we're gonna see higher oil prices, and it's not that easy to just turn on the switch and find new production for the reasons that I already mentioned. But here's the thing that worries me when it comes to the oil stocks. You see, everybody is talking about them. Everybody is so happy to be in those names. I mean, you just go to Twitter and you see tremendous positivity about this sector. Everybody is agreeing on the same thing, okay? And of course, the optimism is being reflected in the stock prices of oil companies. And I always talk about 3 inches in front of your face. The investment community or the stock prices of particular companies only start moving up when a story is 3 inches in front of people's faces. You see, when it was 10 inches in front of their faces, they were not interested. When it was 20 inches in front of their faces, they were not interested. It has to be like in their face. The articles have to be positive, the fundamentals have to be in the right direction, and they are all pile in at the same time. For me, and it might be different for you, so I don't want to make certain predictions. For me, it usually doesn't turn out very well when everybody is piling in, even if they're right, because they are right. The fundamentals are what they are. The demand is exploding for oil. The production is not really keeping up. Now, we can argue about that OPEC is going to be successful in increasing production, and when the price of oil gets to a certain degree, it will incentivize production. Somehow, the production always comes online, even though the experts say, well, there's lack of investment, there's lack of maintenance, they're going to have a hard time increasing it, they didn't put enough money into the infrastructure. Somehow, magically, the production comes. So that makes me a little bit worried. But this alone doesn't make me as much worried as the fact that everybody is talking about it. Remember in one video when I talked about thesis versus stock, how most investors, they don't invest in a stock, they invest in a thesis, they invest in a story. So they are just investing tourists. And a lot of investing tourists are now interested in this space. So from my history, and because I've done this for so long, it's always comes to my mind is like, okay, how much patience do these tourists have? Is it gonna be 2 more weeks, 2 more months, a year? And then they're gonna get bored with this. Too many of them will pile into the trade, and then they're gonna go and look for another shiny object. I'm always thinking about this, and I'm always worried about it. So even though the thesis is sound, the thesis is one variable. Then I wanna know is how many people are already bought into that thesis. How many people agree with this thesis. Thesis alone is not enough. If the thesis is good, but not a lot of people got that thesis yet, not a lot of people are in that thesis, then it's gonna most likely turn out okay. But if everybody is already on board, and it's hard to say whether they are on board, how much more upside there is. But I'm hearing this. I go on Twitter and everybody is so positive. All the articles are positive. That makes me worried. But that doesn't mean you should be worried. I'm just sharing my thoughts. So for me, I understand the fundamentals. I agree with the fundamentals. I don't like that this whole situation is already 3 inches in front of people's face and the tourists are piling in. Also, I don't like the oil and gas business. I don't like it. It's not a great business. It's a capital intensive business. I personally like to focus more on good businesses that are not capital intensive. And also this space, yes, I can find some microcaps. I focus on microcaps. I focus on small companies. And if I were to go into that space and put a play on this, where am I going to get the money from? I would have to sell something because I am mostly invested. So am I going to sell Oracle to go into this 3 inches in front of my face thesis? Am I going to sell Voxter? Am I going to sell Globex? I couldn't even sell Globex if I wanted to because all of my shares are restricted. I do have Voxter shares and I do have Oracle shares. Well, there's not a chance in the world that I'm selling Oracle to play in the oil and gas space. Not a chance that I would be selling Voxter to go into oil and gas. So for me, I'm just a spectator. For me, yeah, it's nice. I understand the thesis, but I am most likely not going to participate. But I think this whole situation is good for tankers. I do. I mean, you can say it's not good for tankers because if OPEC and if the oil producing companies have a hard time increasing production, then they're going to have not a lot of demand for the transportation services. We'll see about that. As I said before, I think they're going to find a way to increase production because the price of oil always incentivizes production, and somehow they always figure out a way to increase production. And then once the production increases, well, how is it going to get transported? It's going to get transported on oil tankers. And so oil and oil price is 3 inches in front of people's face. Oil tankers, it's 6 inches in front of their face. They can only focus here. They can't focus here. But as long as these fundamentals of oil stay the way they are, the oil tankers are going to keep moving closer and closer, and eventually they will be 3 inches in front of people's face, and everybody on Twitter is going to be talking about oil tankers again. So anyway, these are my thoughts on oil. The thesis is sound. Yes, the supply and demand is sound. Demand is increasing. Production is having a hard time keeping up for very good reasons. All the news on oil stocks and oil price is great. Tourists are piling in. I would just rather make a video about it than to put my money behind it. Tell me your thoughts. Are you investing in the oil stocks or are you staying away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.